a lot of times there are so many beautiful films that talk about such important issues that go completely unnoticed in the commercial festival circuit. Like, for example, the opening movie that we are going to see in a little while, it's The Chocolate Case, which is about chocolate that is made free of child labor or child slavery. And we are so happy to have the opportunity to present that and also offer the audience a taste of Tony's Chocolonely, which is the chocolate that came as a result.
Mass incarceration is becoming, or has been, that's the new way of attaining slave labor and putting people away, mainly men of color. That's real, and companies are making profit off of that. So, I mean, it's everything from our sense of health and safety and democracy. Capitalism cannot equal a healthy commerce in society. So it's heavy shit, right? But the way that we're using art is to actually help to lift the spirits and use that to help people feel inspired to create a better collective vision with each other. Starting a conversation, as I said, is the first place for how I've chosen to start. And
this is great being on the red carpet, right? In socially relevant issues, we have to be flexible, use our imaginations, and prop up the people who we care about.
We're happy to be here at the Socially Relevant Film Festival because it gives the public an opportunity to see our films, and sometimes there is not that opportunity in other places, so this venue is very, very important.
I also think it's important that people realize how broken the justice system is, okay? You could be rich and kill people and get away with it. You can be poor and go to prison and actually get executed. There's been dozens of executed innocent people in this country. We know there are 157 exonerees. Those are the people we know about, that we know about. But what about the ones that are still there? Because once you get convicted, it is very difficult to get yourself out of that situation, because it's never about guilt or innocence as you go into your appeals. It's about a mistake in some procedural error happened. So it is really important for people to understand that innocent people do go to prison. Sometimes they even get executed. And when you hear the stories, the stories of these men and women we profile, there's 157, we profile 16 in our film, 14 men and 2 women. And some of them had just gotten literally out of prison when we shot the film in the fall of 2016. So we hope that it makes people rethink the death penalty, because we don't have to become the murderer. We have very great prisons that we could keep people in if they're dangerous, and certainly we should. But prisons have lost sight of what they're about. They used to be about rehabilitation. Now they're only about punishment, and now with our new government, it's going to get worse and worse and worse, because more prisons are going to become privatized. It's going to be about money, and it's going to be about making sure there are people in those beds. And so we have to fight back against injustice, and we need to speak out. And the voices of the exonerated death row survivors are the most powerful voices to end the death penalty in this country.
Let me just say that the films are very important, but it's also important to have you here to help us tell our stories to a wider audience. And that's what we must do, is take these relevant social issues and make them everybody's issues.
Are you familiar with that play, Exonerated?
I am extremely familiar because the woman character in that film named Sunny Jacobs.
Yeah,
Okay, so I'm going to divert a little bit, but I'm the person that got her out of prison.
that's wonderful.
Okay.
What's the name of your film?
Well, I made a well, but
The
she's
Gathering.
not in The Gathering. But this is what got me involved in death penalty, because she was my best childhood friend. I hadn't seen in 30 years when I found out she and her husband were on death row in Florida. I was living in Los Angeles being a filmmaker. I was shocked to hear that story, and I started to write to her. And one day she called me collect, and I said, Sonny, forgive me for asking, but what the hell happened? And she said she was innocent. And that sent me and my co-producer on a 2.5-year journey where we left Los Angeles, spent 2.5 years in Florida, where we uncovered the evidence that not only proved her innocence, but proved her husband's innocence, who the state of Florida had already executed. Okay. And I was able to make a big Hollywood movie, a dramatic film called The Blink of an Eye, with Mimi Rogers, Veronica Hamill, Jeffrey Dean Morgan, Denise Richards, Polly Bergen, and Piper Laurie. And that film, when it was released in 1996, changed a lot of people's attitudes, because people think that you're in prison, you must be guilty. But that's how I got involved in death penalty. And then shortly after that, I met this man here, and meeting him was such an inspiration for me. And I've been on this path of trying to educate people that we should be civilized like all the European countries. You know, we're the only Western nation that executes its own people. And we have more crime, more violence than anybody else. So we need to put our resources into children, into impoverished children, into disenfranchised children, so people don't go to prison. Okay, we need to do more, and we need to do better.
So last night, Nate and I were at a dinner with, at a table with Jessica Bland, who was one of the writers and directors of The Exonerated.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who, and we continue to work with Jessica and her husband Eric on a number of different projects. But it's people who, like Mickey, who put their money, their time, and their dreams together so that other people may learn from them.
Just one more question. Is it also, don't you say, it's also related to racism in this country? I mean, it doesn't transcend, white people are not executed like that, but...
Well, white people are executed, but in terms of the numbers of people, in terms of percentages, obviously the more minorities are on death row than anybody else. We talk about that issue. One of our exonerees in the film says that the death penalty is another form of slavery. Okay, so certainly there is bias and prejudice against minorities, but I'm going to let Nate speak to that.
Yeah, well, you know, it's been 158 mistakes. People that were sentenced to death who wasn't supposed to be there. 158 mistakes. If your car broke down 158 times, what would you do? You would get rid of it, correct? You would get rid of that car. So why are we holding on to this death penalty when it has sent 158 of our citizens, white, black, brown, to death row for something they didn't do? Why are we holding on to it? I'm the living proof standing here today. I'm one of those 158 people who's on death row, waiting to die for something I didn't do. And this is what this film is about. I had 2 execution days. Well, it's really just the grace of God. I'm standing here, but I didn't do the crime. And so didn't all the other 157 guys. But this is what we're trying to get out. We all make mistakes, and the system should not be tinkering with the death penalty because we all make mistakes. It's gonna happen. One innocent person, 2, 3, 4, has already been executed. One is too many. One mistake in the death penalty is too many. And that's what this movie is defining. What's happening with the death penalty and why we shouldn't be tinkering with it. We have failed as a civilization. If we had to come back and say the only way to correct a problem is to kill someone, we have failed. We have completely failed because that's not civilized to do that. For anything, It's not civilized to do that, because once you start tinkering in it, it's going to be a backlash to it. Because once again, we all make mistakes. You might get a few that's probably was guilty, but in that batch, 1, 2, 3, that's too many. One person, that's too many. You're taking that person from his family, his kids, and his whole life.
I'm just going to give you one statistic. For every 9 executions in this country, 1 death row inmate is exonerated. Okay. For every 9, 1 is found innocent. Okay. So if you were up in the in the sky and 9 planes that were flying, and every time one was going to drop out of the air, you probably wouldn't fly anymore. Okay. So that statistic is horrifying. Okay. That 1 out of 9 are innocent.
So if you're a black person, you're 5 to 7 times more likely to get the death penalty if you kill a white person. Nate and I kill each other. We might get a life sentence of 20 years, but if we kill a white person, God forbid they're blonde, blue-eyed, then you're really in trouble. So it's about race and it's about economics. So the white people that are on death row didn't have the money to get the proper defense. If you get the proper defense, proper investigation, you have a good chance of getting justice. But even if you got justice, we need to figure out why we need to sentence people. And as Nate said, we are not doing our job in society, in our schools. We have too many people in prison. And our answer is punishment as opposed to reconciliation and healing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Come see our film tomorrow on 4.
Yes.
So the way I choose to use my art, really, one of the big things I'm resisting is stereotypes. I feel like when it comes to hip hop, people have a certain stereotype of a rapper. Even I do. You think of somebody like 50 Cent. You feel like somebody who's probably aggressive, gangster, probably not well educated, or can't express himself that well, and which is not true. I'm just saying that most of the masses probably feel that same way. So I use my music to resist that stereotype, because there's so much more. Like this is real art. We manipulate words, we manipulate language, and we create melodies. And last year I put out 2 projects. It was a series called Steal This Mixtape, and it was inspired from Steal This Book, which is a book that came out, I think, in the 70s, which was an anarchist type book. Exactly. So I forgot the author's name, but basically what it was, all the publishers didn't want to touch it because of the message that was in there in that book. But through word of mouth, it became a big hit. Everybody liked it. So I took that concept and just steal this mixtape, and basically not being able to afford or have access to some of the beats of some of my favorite producers, I would just steal them and I would rap over them, or I would take a speech that I like I'll take one of the late speeches of Martin Luther King, when not the one from I Have a Dream, later on, a little before where he got killed, and I put a Jay Dilla beat under it and use it as a skit, because I could convey that message to some people who have never heard it before and create an experience for them. And what I like about music is see, New Yorkers, we're used to diversity. We're used to different types of people, different backgrounds. But people in, I don't know, North Dakota somewhere, they probably never met somebody that's different than them. And they have a different worldview. But through music, you can make it, hip-hop is cool enough for them to be interested in that. And it's like, look, I relate to this guy. I have nothing in common with him, or so I think. But actually, I do. And I use that. And
so what is the cultural background that of Dutch people? I mean, the Dutch found New York. Now you are in New York. What is that cultural background of the Dutch to promote this kind of themes?
The actual Dutch background, the background of the actual Dutch living in New York, it might be very diverse. Of course, we have a shared history, cultural history with New York. We started this place with New Amsterdam. We provided New York with its DNA, you can say, which is about entrepreneurship. It's about pragmatic tolerance. It's about participatory government, which is which is something which we gave New Amsterdam and which stayed here. I mean, and it was important for the identity of the United States. All the immigrants passing through Manhattan, getting acquainted with these very important features, going into the United States. So we owe this country that part. But I think what for us is very important is the diversity of New York, which very much is very much in line with what we feel is important in our own society, which is very diverse too. So that's also the common good which we share with New York.
Yeah, but my question is, why is these kind of themes are so important for the Dutch people? Is there something in your culture, historically?
Well, you are alluding to...
because if you are such a free liberal,
Yeah.
Promoting all these social themes.
Yes.
Well,
you talk of our country. You're talking of a very diverse country with a very strong non-governmental input. I mean, we have a strong civil society with a lot of opposition to government. We are very democratic, but there's a lot of critical groups. Of course, we look at our history with a very keen eye and very critical eye on what we did, what we established, and what we also, also lesser aspects of our history get a lot of attention. And together, we feel that we have a huge responsibility in that sense. Our civil society is very aware of that, and it goes it touches upon all aspects of life: diversity, our colonial history, our responsibility related to the wars around us, the people who are in need, who are looking for asylum, immigration, keeping peace in Europe. We're a founding member of the European Union, and we're very much committed to keep Europe peaceful and to make the European project a success.
I don't want to get into politics. I don't want you to get into politics, but I'm curious, is there something at this critical time of the European and American Western history, you wanted to come back and say, hey, we gave you Dutch, we gave you the New York, we gave you this liberal philosophy, and now you are not following what we gave it to you, just do you have a new message? That's what I'm saying.
No, I think this message is not new, it's very old. We keep to our values and norms, which is about tolerance, which is about going along with each other, which is about our international responsibility and the need for international cooperation, which is not something only of the West, but of the whole world, and there's nothing new on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Rao. I come from India. I have been in struggle. See, my perception is there's a lot of things here say art for art's sake. To me, it sounds very weird. I was a lawyer. Then I became accidentally an actor 15 years ago. What I was told and did way back in India was there is a people's movement. You are fighting against certain injustice, so you may have a different ideology. You are a Marxist, you are a libertarian, you are something else. So in that process, the artist comes in. It seems like in America everything surrounds around these artist conducts the revolution. No, artist doesn't conduct revolution. The revolution comes from the people, and artist enhances it and participates in it, and he has a role to play. At least that's my perception. Correct me if I'm wrong. And also the Twitter and all these things. All these instruments, so we used to, when we were there, We didn't have Twitter, we didn't have Google, we didn't have anything. We used to have cyclostyle machines. We used to write political pamphlets, and put it on the breakfast table. We used to use our scholarship monies to do that. But here, what people tell me is, oh, Twitter did the revolution. Twitter did not do the revolution in Middle East. People did the revolution. They used these instruments that are available, the modern technology, to enhance it, to reach the masses. So it's a long discussion, but if you want to reflect on these few thoughts, we'd be grateful.
I don't think anybody here said art was for art's sake. I think art is for inspiration and reflection. And
what is the premise of your narrative?
Flora is a film about a female American veteran who's living in her car, working as a security guard, trying to build her life back up, and she keeps hitting a wall in terms of her credentials. After a meeting with a career center officer, she goes back to her car, which has been towed, and she ends up homeless. So it's a film drawing attention to the rising homeless veteran population in this country, particularly among women veterans.
Do you have a kind of alternative solutions to this problem besides being a female?
Do I have alternative solutions to this problem?
Of growing a veteran?
I don't. I don't. It's a good question. I think as a filmmaker, I like to put the message out there. I don't have any alternative solutions in terms of the next steps to take.
Because it's not the camera which makes the photograph, it's the photographer. Technically, only because I use a very slow camera. I still photograph with film, analog, and that's because the camera as an extension of my way of seeing allows me to photograph slow. So I use a medium format camera. I don't think it's possible to photograph fast. At least that's my perception, my philosophy, because you need really to be in touch with the subject, whatever the subject is, and this takes time. Photography is about time, waiting for time.
What is your way of seeing things? Do you have a philosophical perspective about it?
Pardon?
What is your way of seeing it? Do you have a philosophical perspective about it?
What do you say, philosophical, you mean?
Yeah, because Palestinian question has been involved with two-state solution or only one state. Yeah, so do you have an opinion about it, or you have a perspective about it?
Maybe a political.
Well, my book is not strictly political because it addresses the aftermath of the conflict. It's about the land. Of course, my view is that what is happening there is a crime. I want to say this very loudly. It's a crime because another country occupies Palestine, Israel. So the identity of the country, land, and the people has been denied. That has to be said clearly. It's not only my opinion, it is a fact.
So how do you feel about these new settlements in...
The new settlements are, again, a crime against humanity, not only against Palestine. First of all, they are illegal, they should not be there. That is another country. And the second, the amount of destruction which the settlements have caused on the land is unbelievable. They have destroyed a millennial landscape which belongs to all of us. So there are no excuses whatsoever for the settlements.
Just like I was asking earlier, filmmaker, do you have a message to Mr. Trump, President Trump?
I do not agree with Mr. Trump. I'm not an American citizen, I'm a resident in the United States. If my voice has a meaning, I would say, first of all, do not take the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem. That would be an enormous mistake.
By the way, I will bring a book tomorrow, just hopefully have a table where you can see the book, because we didn't bring today all the storm, and also Federico's exhibition works from the book. The book has 79 pages work, photographs. And how many works at the DM gallery?
There are 50.
50 works, 15 photographs as big as 3 foot by 3 foot.
3 foot.
Yeah, okay. And it's at the DM Contemporary Gallery, which is at 29 or 39? 29 Street.
One thing I want to, yeah, good. One thing I want to talk about that I'm doing that I'm very excited about, I linked up with a company called Mideast Tunes, which is, it's basically Spotify only for the Middle East and Africa. And they have thousands of artists on there, amazing stuff, hip hop, experimental music, noise, jazz, everything, right? So I linked up with the owner of that, and we are joining together in the project that I had mentioned, Unit of Resistance. So we are actually doing it's going to be called Taksim, and it's also called the Borderless Sound Archive. And what we're doing is similar to the project I did on the Bush, when the second term of the Bush thing. But this time it's embedded into the site. So if you go to mideasttunes.com, and this should happen in about 2 months probably. I'm not going to say exactly when, because we don't want people to stop us. But there will be thousands of artists from Middle East and Africa who will be uploading sounds from their phones. They can record protests, they can record gunshots, they can record music, it doesn't matter. And I'm going to be there editing and hacking them into samples, and then they're going to be free samples that anyone can grab who's on the platform. And then they will be able to produce music, and then we are going to be shipping that music all over the place. So if you can, check out mideasttunes.com and yeah, stay focused on that. That's all I got.